dogs.
I was making my way west into the Gulf of Carpentaria, eventually heading up into the Northern Territory to meet up with a mate and see what sort of hunting the Territory could offer me. I had a long way to go before I got there though. But of course, I'm never going to do a trip like that without doing some hunting. I had a new toy to play with, this drone, which I'd hoped was going to go and scout for me and find the pigs.
It's almost a bit unfair. Sent it out to find pigs and then told it to come home while I get ready. Unfortunately, the best laid plans of hunters and dogs often go astray, and the wind swung behind us, and by the time we got there, the pigs were long gone. So we carried on, and we got a couple of small ones later in the night, but soon it was time to establish camp. This lot. Leave your swag unattended for half a minute and they're just taking the piss. What is it? Dogs love swags. Go on, get off there, you bloody assholes. So we got a nice early start the next morning. Put some K's under our belt before I decided to pull up at a nice looking little river and have some breakfast. Morning, Prickle. You think all your Christmases have come at once, don't you? Prickle's eyeing up this back steak I took off this young boar last night. And she thinks she's in for a decent breakfast, but she's out of luck. This bloke reckons he ought to share more breakfast. I reckon he's dreaming. Get out of it, you big slobbery hooer. I've never seen a body of water I didn't want to fish, so I tried my hand at a barra, hoping that the slightly warmer weather might get them a bit more active. No luck, unfortunately, but it was a bloody nice morning to be mucking around down on a riverbank. Oh, well, these guys are pretty prevalent in the bush up here. This is a bitter melon, so it's, yeah, belongs to the cucumber family. And when the fruits are green, they're commonly used as a vegetable, particularly in Asian cuisines. Yeah, when they're green, as the name suggests, they're bitter as hell, and I think very much an acquired taste. But when they're ripe like this, these little seeds are covered in a red aril, and you can eat that. It's not bad. There's not much on it. A little bit sweet, kind of a cucumbery taste, but you don't eat the seed, you just suck the red pulp off it. So yeah, bitter melon. So walking along the riverbank here, there's a really strong smell of butterscotch that's coming from these flowers here. They're one of the paperbarks, one of the melaleucas. I'm not sure which species exactly, but the flowers, these big sprays, are full of nectar, and they're really good. They have a bit of a sweet treat. Just make sure you don't inhale a bee as you're doing it, because they love them too. These trees here are worth knowing about. There's a fig, and not only can we eat them, the pigs love them, so it's good to know. The interesting thing about figs is that they're not actually a fruit. They're something called a synconium, which is an inverted flower, basically. It's gonna be hard to pick on the GoPro here, but those of you who know what the inside of a fig looks like, there's all those little hairs in there. They're actually the flowers, male and female flowers. And flying out of this fig here are a tiny bunch of wasps. These wasps are the sole pollinator of the fig flower. So what happens is a female wasp comes and lays a bunch of eggs into the fig as it's forming, and as the fig ripens, the eggs hatch into male and female wasps, and they live in there inside the fig, sort of breeding and growing, and when the fig's ripe, they get covered in the pollen, and then they burst out, and the females go off to...
Still, this all wasn't getting me where I needed to be, so I kept on rolling.
I've been driving down this road for a good hour now, following some directions from some locals that I met, who told me a spot I was allowed to go and camp and do a bit of fishing and hunting. So the directions were a bit hazy. Remains to be seen whether I can actually find my way to where they pointed me, or whether I'm just going to be driving around in the wilderness for the next day or two.
But the locals' directions held true, and I eventually found my way into a beautiful piece of the Gulf Coast.
Pretty magic bit of country here. Well, he's not big, but he's a barra. He's not very big at all, but a barra's a barra. Oh, you're a very, very small little fish, aren't you? Good evening. So we have Prickle, Asti, Borry, Bindi and Mia at the back. Good jump on Mia. Went the wrong way at the start. I've got it now. Not a bad ball there. Reasonable sort of little jaw on him. Nothing massive, but yeah, getting the kick in the teeth. He's an old bugger, his teeth are all worn down. He's on his way out, this bloke. Oh well, good dogs.
The landscape changed, and finally I was in the territory.
Oh well, had to happen eventually. Surprised it didn't happen sooner actually. Bush bashing through here. They ran a long way for a very, very small pig. It's a little sow there. I don't know if there was anything better in the mob, but this is what they got. And
so with my advanced scout having done its job, headed towards that swamp. It wasn't too long before the dogs jumped. Bindi and Prickle went about 400 metres and treed up, and we were on a pig.
I can see pigs through there. What a racket! You can see why the pigs are here. This blind fox colony. These guys are really unhappy. So these little guys are little red flying foxes. They're a migratory species. They'll travel massive distances from food source to food source during the year. But often when they hit one of these little oases, they'll park up for a while. Now it's not their breeding season yet, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's a food source around here somewhere. Even though they're called fruit bats, they rely heavily on nectar from flowering trees and things.
Well, I'd done the tourist thing, dusk was falling, and that of course means pig hunting. So I took the dogs out for a bit of a lap up and down some tracks, and unfortunately we didn't find any pigs. We found an owl at nightjar, which was real interesting, but no pork on the ground unfortunately. At some point I had to call it a night, so I stopped harassing the wildlife and went and found a camp. Tried to get some sleep, ready for the push into Darwin the next day. Final run up the Stewart Highway and I was approaching Darwin, my destination and hopefully where the real hunting will begin. So thanks for watching this, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for the next instalment. I'll catch ya.